rebuilding confidence, and harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zymet.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Beverly Zymet Show, where being the best you has just gotten easier. And my guest today, calling in from Canada, right across the waves of Niagara Falls, which is an absolutely amazing place. If you've never seen the falls, put it on your bucket list, right? So Jeeva Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Beverly. Good to be with you.
So what is it? What does Jeeva do out there besides go and sit there and watch these beautiful falls?
Well, there are two main things that Jiva does. One is with my wife Sulojana. We are marriage mentors, and so
Oh,
we
okay.
specialize in mentoring married couples who are basically on the brink of breakdown to break through, and we do it in as little as 10 weeks, and we guarantee the results. So that's the one thing that we do. The other thing that I do mostly with her a little bit and with my son Satya is we're spiritual mentors to entrepreneurs, and so we
Okay.
work with people who are business owners and leaders, influencers, and help and provide them with the spiritual input that they need for their businesses and to help them stay on track, maintain the balance and make sure they're connected to the source all the time.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And we look at 2020 and the whole upside downness, right? So that marriage counseling thing, that's got me intrigued here, because, again, in this lockdown and that, I'm not sure what degree is, up there in the area where you are, but I know down here in the States, depending on where you are, a lot of places now are going back into second round lockdown.
Mhm.
So when all of a sudden, your world comes to that halt, and the people that are surrounding you are the ones in the four walls, next to each other, and sometimes it's like, wow, how could I have lived with you all these years and and not know that this was an issue going on, right? So are you finding that during this time that more people are beginning to reach out and say, wow, we need some kind of guidance and direction here because we're at
Mhm.
each other's throats, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that the lockdown has had two different kinds of impact on marriages. There are some couples, whose marriages were in trouble simply because they just could not spend time with each other, because of
Right.
conflicting work schedules, demands of children's activities, that kind of stuff. So for them, the lockdown has been a blessing
Right.
because they actually are spending time with each other and they want to, and so they strengthen their marriages. But on the other hand, where couples already had issues, the
Right.
lockdown has certainly made things worse. Like we are actually offer a free report to everybody that goes to our website, and in that report we basically point out that crisis any crisis exposes cracks that are already there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, a crisis like the COVID-19 can cause cracks in a marriage, but more often than not, because you are now forced to spend time with each other, then the things that were there that maybe you were trying to avoid, you're now
Right.
staring them right in the face. You cannot avoid them anymore because you're locked together.
Yes, and those are the ones that are like, okay, how do we survive this without killing each other, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then if there's
yeah.
children involved, it just kind of adds more fuel to the fire, so to speak. Because
Mhm.
sometimes rather than taking it out on each other or on yourself, it's those that you love most, are the ones that
Yes.
get the impact, right? Are you seeing that?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Like one of the things that this is like all over the news, that crisis hotlines have seen like 800, 900% increase,
Oh, wow.
in calls. Domestic violence calls have unfortunately, are at an all-time high. I put a post on LinkedIn one time, not one time, like about a month ago, just citing a newspaper article, where
Hmm.
about the stresses on marriage and divorces and so on. And so a law firm actually posted a comment like on my post, and they said, we haven't actually seen an increase in the number of divorces or clients requesting a divorce, but the ones that are requesting a divorce now want to get it over and done with like right away,
Right.
because they just cannot stand the stress anymore. They put up with it long enough. I think in the beginning of the lockdown, people were, because nobody expected it to last this long. So
Oh
people
gosh,
thought,
that's so true. Right,
yeah,
right,
yeah. So couples thought, even the ones that knew they were in trouble thought, we'll ride the storm, we'll ride it out, like we'll put up with the stress, like a couple of months, no big deal. We'll be
right,
fine after that. But then the 2 months have, stretched into 6 and 8 now.
right.
And so at that point, people are getting to the point, to the place rather, where it's what I would call like a break point. And so at that stage, like, what do? You have two choices, only two ways to go.
Yeah, it's
Either
either up or down, right?
yeah, either you snap, or you find a way to stay together. And so that's where we come in, where we basically work only with the couples. And we're even a little bit more fussier than that. We basically say, you know what, we will produce results if both of you, both the husband and the wife, are desperate, to make things right somehow, and want to avoid a divorce at all costs, and not necessarily always for financial reasons, even though like a divorce,
Right.
can be expensive. But it's like the stress that it puts you through. You get into adversarial mode. You put your children through hell, and so people just don't want to do that. And those are our candidates.
And that makes so much sense too because of that. And again, when you look at that, it's two sided. You can't help one and let the other one go because it's not a one way street. It's not. It's like, oh, you come over here to my side, right? No, you come over here to my side. No, you come to now you're back and
Yeah.
forth. It's a road that has to meet in the middle,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And like more often than not, we'll find that like either the husband or the wife, more often the wife actually, is the one that initiates the contact with us. And there have been, a couple of cases like recently where the other person has not been 100% on board.
Right.
And so we've basically told them, listen, like we're willing to work with that person, or with both of you actually individually, for a season, but at some stage in a short period of time, you have to get on the same page.
Right. If
Uh,
you're not in the same page in the same book, you're beating a dead horse, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I mean, you're still going to learn so many things about yourself, and really get to understand the truth about you and start to have that inner peace. And that
yeah.
inner peace is so, so important because whether you stay in that relationship or not, once you have that inner peace, and let's just say the other person just can't bring themselves into that, and so there is that separation. But the person who
Mhm.
has found that inner peace, when moving into another relationship, if that were to happen down the road, they're going to see different signs and everything, and build and be an expression completely different than what
Mhm.
they were in that previous connection, right? So
Yeah,
whether or not you stay in or remove yourself from, you're still going to have a peace, like I say, within yourself, and an understanding what makes for a good relationship, what makes for an
Mhm.
interactive relationship, what makes for an understanding. Where are your boundaries, where are your understandings, and again, what's going on here, and why do these things trigger me?
Yeah,
Why does my partner trigger me when they do these things or say these things, right? Because
yeah.
again, we all have that behind the scenes baggage, right, from our
Yeah,
childhood and everything
yeah.
else. So it's really all more or less about understanding the self, becoming a better self, and that's what this show is all about. How do
Yeah,
I become that better me
yeah,
in every
yeah.
aspect of my life, and taking responsibility to say, hey, Houston, hello, Houston, let's wake up. You got an issue here. It's
Yeah,
time to do what? It's time to face who you are, find
yeah.
yourself, and that's kind of the direction that I work with people is, who
Mhm.
really are you? Who is the identity of who you are?
Yeah.
Right? And help you
Mhm.
discover that, and the emotional attachment that rides alongside of creating this who you are not. And let's move that stuff away. Let's
Yeah.
take away those charges and
Yeah.
really focus on filling your own cup
Yeah.
in all aspects of life, whether it's relationships, whether it's finances, whether it's business, whether it's entertainment, no matter what it is. How do we fill that cup so our cup can run over and we
Hmm.
can spill that onto others? Because you
Yes.
can't give more out of yourself than what you give
Yeah.
to yourself. So with a relationship like what you're discussing here, right? You've got to be all in. Because if
Yeah.
you're not all in, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get
Yeah.
that balance, right?
Hmm. Yeah, like we have two fundamental premises that we work with. The number one premise, which we tell couples, is like you don't actually have marriage problems,
Right,
but but what's happening here is we have two individuals with their personal problems that are coupled together in
right.
a marriage, and so together between her problems and his problems, now they produce marriage problems.
Now it becomes their problems, right? Because,
Yeah,
and that is so true because we feed off of that and the similarities. When something is familiar, an emotion is familiar, an event is familiar, it triggers that emotional storage bank.
yeah,
And then, this little molehill becomes this massive, explosive mountain that wants to
yeah,
erupt, and it
yeah,
and it and it usually does. And sometimes
yeah.
it's not very pretty because violence usually comes out of a lot of those eruptions. So someone who really isn't even a violent person, all of a sudden that anger and that
Hmm.
self-destruction and that again that inner conflict
Yeah,
has to go somewhere. And when those buttons get pushed, the survival mechanism kicks in,
yeah.
right? And that's unfortunate. But when we can recognize that these are the games that we're playing here, and
Hmm.
we're a reflection of one another.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you probably teach this, with your uh, people as well, is that when you recognize something, that triggers you, it's like, oh wow, this is a button here that is really pushing something in,
Yeah.
that's creating an really uncomfortable,
Hmm.
event, to
Yeah.
turn it around and say, okay, what here is triggering me? What
Yeah.
in my storage bank,
Yeah.
right? Where's my responsibility in it? It's not so much them,
Yeah.
it's what they triggered in you. And
Yeah.
so you can have that personal growth, and like you say, you have your issues and they've got their issues, and now all of a sudden we got the we issues. And it's to separate those again. You have your life, I have my life,
Yeah.
we build this life together, but let's
Yeah.
build it on a strong foundation. And when
Yeah.
you can help each other heal, oh my gosh, that building together then becomes this sanctuary of divinity, right?
Yeah.
Versus the the abyss of darkness and destruction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. And that's why, like, the early part of our mentorship process, we really like go to great lengths to make sure that each person experiences their own healing,
Right.
from the hurts that they've experienced, that they brought into the marriage. And so, like what you're saying, like I totally resonate with, because a lot of the times when somebody, let's say, like your husband, says something nasty to you,
Right.
and you get mad, the question you always ask is, what's the matter with him? What made him do that?
Right.
But instead, you have to turn it around and say, what made me respond that way? Because it doesn't matter what anybody says.
Right.
What really matters is how I responded to it, and why did I respond, with kind of anger, rage, whatever. What's in me that caused me to respond that way? And almost always, you can trace it back to some kind of a hurt,
Yes.
and I would even say an unhealed hurt, that you have just allowed to stay there and fester. So there's an open wound, and so because you're now going through that pain, you want to now hurt somebody else. Like there's a saying which I'm sure you heard before, that hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, let's make sure those hurts are healed. And so we take people through a fairly intensive, process. And once that healing happens, when two healed people relate to each other,
It's a whole
that
different
is
ball game, right?
exactly, than from two hurt people
Right.
relating to each other, because now, yeah, exactly what you said, you want to now help the other person heal. rather than hurt the other person more or retaliate.
Right.
And so the jabs keep on getting harder, the lower blows keep on getting lower,
Yes.
and and before you know it, like war breaks out. And so what once couples get that realization, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, look what we've been doing to each other.
Yeah, where the destruction is, where that battlefield is, and that's so true what you're saying, because hurt people do hurt people, and it's like, wait a minute, I hurt this much, so I'm going to make you hurt so much more, so that I
Yes.
don't have to feel my pain, because
Yeah.
now you're feeling worse than me, and I conquered it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's crazy, the silly game we play, and it's all
Yes.
done unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
when you look at the conflict, where's the conflict inside? Because when you can surrender to those circumstances, you can stop the conflict, which stops the battle, which stops the war. Because now everybody's got a white flag wagon. It's not about, it's not about giving up.
Yeah.
It's about working in unison, because everything is action and reaction, right?
Hmm.
So we respond to old database of information, like you say, where that slug of hurt was from,
Yeah.
and when you wind it all the way back, a lot of times those issues began with the parent, right?
Yeah.
So it's mother issues or father issues, and then it
Hmm.
works forward in issues with all women or issues with all men,
Yeah.
and it just kind of keeps building, because thought is magnetic, pain is magnetic, and it attaches and attaches,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? And so recognizing those things is a key
Yeah.
relevancy here.
Yeah. Like when we're in a place of hurt, we actually find it easier to believe lies that we would not believe otherwise.
Oh
You know.
gosh, in the stories we tell ourselves to justify,
Yeah.
right, is a lie. 50%. They've proven this through science. I'm not sure how they do it, but 50% of the story that you've told yourself and convinced yourself of, so that you could deal with life and everything, and it's
Yeah.
stored in your database. It's stored in that automatic response, in the cell memory, is a lie. 50%'s a lie.
Yeah.
Now you got
Hmm.
45% that doesn't even belong to you,
Yeah.
plus the lie, right? And so
Yeah.
5% is actual truth, reality.
Yeah.
How are you going to find that in the midst of all of this, right? So the
Yes.
whole thing is like, it's really not worth digging into the depths to try to find that little needle in the haystack. It's like,
Yeah.
Houston has a problem. Houston's creating a major conflict
Yeah.
in the communication here. What can we both do to
Yeah.
like dissolve that,
Yeah.
put the past in the past, and say, where do we start our life today?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, like when you're caught in the heat of the battle, you can't see that.
No,
Right? This is where
no.
you need to scream for help and
Right.
find somebody that can help you identify that. And it's like I'll give you a quick example. Let's take a woman, whose husband, says, "No, I'm done with you," and then I found somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
and boy, she's so beautiful. She just makes me feel awesome, whatever. So all of a sudden, the woman who's been now rejected, starts believing the lie. Well, I'm not pretty. I'm not pretty enough. I'm ugly. And somebody else looks at them and says, "Oh, like, well, look at that woman. She's drop dead gorgeous."
Right.
But deep down, she's believed the lie that she's not attractive, and so she, without realizing it, starts repelling people. And guys are like, why isn't she giving me the time of day? Well,
Exactly.
it's not what's wrong with me, no, buddy. The problem's not with you. It's the lie that she's believing. She's believing that she's not pretty enough for you,
Right.
that she can't measure up to your expectations. And so, like, somebody else has to knock some sense into that woman and say, pardon the expression, but to say, not in a violent way, but to say, hey, look at yourself in the mirror.
Right.
Look at who you really are. Look at the way that God sees you. Look at the way you were created. And you know why you believe that lie is because in that moment of hurt, you were so vulnerable
Right.
that when that lie came floating into you, the enemy, that brought that lie into you, then you bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
So
And
now
that's that
all you
self
had,
protection, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So now all you had to do is to renounce that lie and receive the truth of who you really are, and then keep on affirming that. And now all of a sudden, like you look at yourself differently, you look at others differently,
Right.
And all of a sudden you'll notice that others are now starting to look at you differently,
Right.
because like as you said, like the magnetic field, if you will, that you were setting off, was basically repulsion, and now it turns into attraction.
Right.
And so yeah, so these are the kind of things that like I believe like all of us at some stage in life have believed some lies, unfortunately quite often it is a crisis that will expose that lie for what it is.
Oh, so true. That's so true, and to be able to recognize what those lies are, and that's that self discovery, and who really are you,
Yeah.
and so working in that identity crisis, because that's where I had found myself. I had no identity except by association, right?
Mm,
And my biggest issue was anger, right?
mm,
And once I erupted the anger, I was able to, through the exhaustion of that, take a different look and perspective of things. And so again, we journey into
yeah.
what we needed the assistance with the most. So to be able to move those things away from us that are not really, in essence, who we really are, get
Yeah.
down to the assets, and have an opportunity to work with a group on self-sabotaging. And so we're doing
Mm,
a summit that's going to come out in January on self-sabotage. So when we look at that and all of that database of information that makes us predictable, that makes our automatic responses, all of those are self sabotage events. Because
yeah.
again, we're doing exactly what you said. We're protecting ourselves from feeling pain.
Yeah.
Whatever that pain level is, feeling betrayed, feeling not beautiful enough, feeling less than, feeling a
Hmm.
failure, all of these things, right?
Hmm.
And so it's time to say, whoa, what is it that I'm facing here? I need to really do myself, and that's why they call it the self. It's not being selfish, to be able to give more to others and to care and to share.
Yeah.
You've got to have a full cup here. Because if you
Yep.
think you're giving 100% love to that other person, whether it's a partner or a child or a parent, you're not. If you
Hmm.
don't love yourself 100%,
Yeah.
you're never going to be able to love someone else out there, because you
Yeah.
cannot give more out of yourself than what you
Hmm.
give to yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like one of the greatest teachings that Jesus gave was love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Oh, that is so true. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Sometimes we forget some of these parables that are so powerful, that have
yeah.
been around, since, eons of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
again, start living by some of these, because
Yeah.
they are truth. They're
Yeah.
they're deep down instilled truth.
Yeah. And that's why you cannot will yourself to love somebody else and keep it going if you still hate yourself.
You know that, yeah, that couldn't have been better said. Yeah, because
Like
if
you can do all the affirmations you want. I love my wife. I love my husband. I love my wife. I love my kids.
right,
Till you're blue in the face,
and it's not
and
gonna.
you're still not going to have any change if you,
No.
without realizing it, are
Yeah,
actually
God, I
hating
can't stand
yourself.
my own skin, right? And it's like, but I'm gonna love your skin. Not so much, right?
Yeah.
We can sit here and we can laugh about it, and I think
Yeah.
once we begin to expose these things about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And what I have found in working with myself and also working with clients, to discover that real person by moving away the facade, shall I say,
Yeah.
right? All
Yeah.
of a sudden, when you're speaking these things out loud, because the thinking thought and the speaking thought are not even in the same, they're not even on the same planet. They're so far apart, right?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you can begin laughing with yourself. And when you can
Hmm.
start laughing with yourself, you really know you're on the right track, and that healing then starts speeding up, because
Yeah.
it's like laughter is one of the best healers, right?
Yes.
Right? And the laughter. What do they say? Laughter is healing,
It's the
right?
best. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the best medicine. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so sometimes, when we take our own medicine, so to speak, when we look at some of these things, within ourselves to to change those,
Hmm.
it doesn't taste good. It
Yeah.
doesn't smell good. and it sure as a heck don't feel very good. And it doesn't paint a very good portrait, so it doesn't look good, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't hear good when I speak it or when someone else says it to me, and that's why I respond like, I'm gonna punch your lights out, So
Yeah.
when all those senses get involved, it's like now it's really time to take charge of you. You can't
Hmm.
control who you are or what you do, but you can take charge of that,
Yeah.
and then you can redefine and rewire that brain,
Yeah.
remove that old database that doesn't serve purpose, put the new database of information of who you really are, who
Yeah.
you see yourself as, because a lot of times we even forget what it is that we wanted. What's the destiny? Go back into your childhood. What were your biggest dreams? What did you want out of life, right? You
Yeah.
know, and did you want the picket fence? Did you want the big house and the car and the 2.5 kids? Because that's kind of an instinctual thing,
Yeah.
and especially for a woman, that fulfilling piece. Why didn't it happen?
Mm.
What run the muck along here? And again, getting back into that dream. Sometimes it's hard to even visualize or dream it, and so a lot of times I take my clients back into what if. Let's pretend. Let's just
Mm.
pretend. What if? What does that perfect world look like to you? And what
Mm.
would you have to do then that you're doing now
Yeah.
to be able to reach that? So it's taking away those things that are preventing you from being there because you deserve it, you're
Yeah.
worthy of it, and again, it goes
Hmm.
back into my cup's not full,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's a lot better place
selflessness.
to. Yeah. It's a lot better place to live out of the overflow of
Oh
what you
goodness,
have to
that's
offer.
yeah,
Yeah. They don't have to strive because
right.
it'll just flow out of you rather
And
than
then
always.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you're going to attract to you what those people that are going to support you,
Yeah.
because again, that it's all energy, and energy is
Hmm.
magnetic. So if you're putting energy out, come hurt me. Well, guess what? Those people that are going to trigger that in you, it's going to
Yeah.
happen. But if you're
Hmm.
putting out that come love me,
Hmm.
that's what you're going to get. But you got to have a
Yeah.
full here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, like sometimes you find when people have, had multiple long-term relationships or even marriages, they'll leave one situation that was really bad and then find themselves right into another one which is exactly the same.
Right where they left off.
Yeah,
Yep.
even though it started out well, and then also like, how did I do that? How could I not see it? In the beginning. Well,
Right.
it's because you didn't get healing from for what caused all those problems in the first
Right.
place. And men are actually notorious for jumping very quickly into another relationship when one fails.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and so now they just go from hurting one woman to another, and so that's why like for you to get healed on your own, whether you're married or not, right now is very, very important.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, especially in this time
yeah,
of the world that we're in. And which then also connects into what it is you're doing on that spiritual aspect of things, right? Because we are a soul being,
yeah.
right? Can you share with the audience a little bit more on what you're doing in that spiritual aspect and how you kind of bring those two together, right? In that
Okay, all
healing
right.
aspect.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, like the second fundamental premise that we work with is that we are created as we call it a spirit, soul, body, being.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially, we are like a spirit being, with a soul. And the definition of soul in this particular case is a collective name given to the mind, will, and emotions, and then the body. And so the body is the physical, the external. So for example, there's a problem that comes. Well, I'll use the marriage as an example. A
Mm-hmm.
couple comes and says, you know what, we just cannot seem to resolve any conflict on our own. So I can go to my file folder and I can pull out a conflict resolution pattern, 10 steps to resolving couple conflict. Okay, guys, this is what you do.
Right.
So they listen and they say, oh, my Pastor Jiva, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. We're going to make this work. You watch. We'll make this work. And
Right.
so you don't hear from them 3 months later, they call and they say, we're having problems again. So what about the pattern? well, we can't get ourselves to use the pattern anymore. Aha. So
Aha.
now your soul is getting in the way, right? Your emotions, you don't have the determination of the will, and you have something in your mind, some, ungodly beliefs, some limiting beliefs, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, so it's like, okay, now we need to address that as well. So, that's where a lot of counseling comes in. A lot of counselors are, extremely proficient at helping people, to help to deal with their emotions, to look at the beliefs and so on. But there's another part of you which is even deeper, because somebody can, like a lot of the couples that come to us, and this is not a put down of counselors or therapists, but a lot of people have come to us after having gone through sometimes years of counseling and
Right.
therapy, and they haven't gotten the results, or they've had results but they cannot keep the results going. And it's because there's a deeper part of you which we define as the spirit, and it's the spirit part of you that communicates with the spirit, the divine spirit, the Holy Spirit in the Christian tradition. And so that's the point at which, like the spiritual realities are things like, forgiving each other.
Right.
So
Right.
forgiveness is a spiritual, transaction that you do in the spirit realm. Or sometimes you can forgive someone, but you can keep on judging them. And
Right.
yeah, yeah. And
And
so when
that
you keep on,
self that that self judgment, right?
yeah,
And that
yeah,
self forgiveness is so important as well.
yeah,
And I think we forget about that a lot of
yeah,
times, right?
yeah. And one of the spiritual realities is that when you do not forgive, then others will be reluctant to forgive you.
Right.
When you keep on judging, others will keep on judging you. Like, it's the law of sowing and reaping, in
Yes.
effect. And so no matter whether it's you're working with an entrepreneur who's kind of hit the wall, in what they're doing, or whether it's a couple that cannot move any further, then we have to take them back, and say, okay, let's look at what's happening in the spirit realm with you. you
Mm-hmm.
know like where have you allowed unforgiveness to block you from achieving your full potential as a husband, as a wife, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a CEO, whatever the case may be. And so once they start to move from that, and sometimes they find it difficult to forgive because that is rooted in a deep hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we have a trained team that we actually send them through, to work with them, because it takes fair bit of in-depth work. And so in a very gentle way, it's not a condemning way, but in a very gentle way, they do it with the guidance of the Holy Spirit, take them back to that, because nobody wants to revisit pain.
Right.
But when you go there and you say, okay, now let me see, why did I experience that pain? Why is that pain still, part of my cellular memory, so to speak?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, it's because my teacher said this to me, or my dad embarrassed me in front of my siblings, and I never forgave him, even
Oh,
though it was way
yes.
far back then. Okay, but my dad's dead now. What do I do? Well, doesn't matter, because in forgiveness, you are releasing yourself from captivity. And so as soon as you now make a declaration as simple as, I choose to forgive my dad for embarrassing me in front of all my siblings on Christmas morning, it's like, oh, like something just
Oh
leaves
yeah, it's
you.
like this weight just like lifts,
Yeah,
and you're like, oh my gosh, it is so freeing when you begin to recognize those things
yeah,
and forgive,
yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, now the atmosphere is cleared up. It's almost like there was this veil that was preventing, the blessings from flowing into you.
Right.
So it may be a wall, but for most people, I believe it's just a veil. And as soon as you release that forgiveness, it's like the veil is punctured,
Mm-hmm.
or the veil, disappears. And so all of a sudden, like, we see people, like in the marriage example, like, quite often the change happens like from 1 week session to the next week session. It's like, who are these people? You
Right.
know, they didn't want to look at each other last week. They didn't want to hold hands. Now they can't keep their hands off each other. They're laughing. Well,
Yeah.
what happened? Because all of a sudden that veil was punctured and removed. And so all the stuff was there for them, waiting for them.
Right.
But now they're able to experience it. Or in the case of an entrepreneur, who's, like, worked and worked and worked and worked. Again, they have 17 contracts that are ready to be signed, and all of a sudden nobody's signing.
Right.
Well, now it's like, okay, I forgive all those people, and I repent of all the judgments that I made against these people, who are delaying my cash flow by not signing. And once they kind of release that in the spiritual realm, it's like people, they start getting calls. Hey, when can we get going with that? And all of a sudden, what we hear from them is, hey, I got too much work to do now. What do I do?
Right.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
that's how
and that is so true. That is
Yeah, so
so
that's
true.
how powerful it is.
Right.
When you start with the spirit realm, it's not a place where a lot of people go or even know how to take somebody. So it's a very specialized
Right.
kind of, process that you have to take people through. But once you go there and with that gentle guidance that you need, then the difference is like night and day. And that's why, like, people often ask us, like, how can you guarantee that a couple, who've been fighting, for 20 years, all of a sudden in 10 weeks you can get them a breakthrough? Well, this is I'm spilling secrets now. This is the secret, is when you take them all the way back to the spirit, and then you bring them into the soul realm. So now you have to help them to replace some old patterns,
Right.
replacing some beliefs. They show how to express your emotions honestly, in a non-threatening way, in a non-judgmental way, and also be able to receive the other person's feelings, with the same kind of a spirit. And you cannot do it if you didn't get the spiritual healing first, because otherwise you will
Right.
immediately get defensive, or you'll be threatened. And that's what, well, no, you can't feel that way. Like, all those kind of statements come when
Uh huh.
somebody's not healed. But when you're healed, it's like, oh, really, honey? That's how it made you feel? Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel so awful that I made you feel that way. Will you forgive me? See, that's a totally different way
Right.
in which you handle the hurt than if you still had those open wounds, and you're feeling that pain and responding out of pain.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So I
you know,
hope
and
that.
it's taking that sympathy out and having empathy, because a
Yeah.
lot of times why we respond, pain with pain, and have that sympathy, because we relate to the similarity of that pain point, right? And
Yeah.
again, now it triggers, uncomfortability within us,
Yeah.
to recognize. So it's a twofold assistance here.
Yeah.
Move the sympathy away, the victim, the poor little me, right? And say, okay, I am going to give my whole self to you to
Hmm.
really listen to what you're saying. I am going to move sympathy and my pity party out of the way so that I can empathize with what it is that you're expressing to me. And
Hmm.
when you look at it from a perspective of having empathy, not
Yeah.
sympathy, the healing begins twofold, because
Yeah.
now you're actually moving yourself out of the way of your own pain, and you
Yeah.
can recognize that, and you can allow that person to become that expression as, this is how it made me feel.
Yeah.
Right now it's
Yeah.
like, wow. And then you
Yeah.
can share, triggering, when I was making you feel that way, I was feeling like this.
Yeah.
And now that communication is open, and it's a
Hmm.
dual healing process, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like one of the things that we teach couples to do is to enter into the other person's pain. So
Yes,
let's say
because
that my
because
wife.
because you are, you're
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
attaching to it. That's
Yeah.
great.
So my wife and I had an argument, and it's gone to a place where we just don't want to talk to each other. So when we finally do get to talk to each other after a timeout, which is very important sometimes, take a timeout,
Yeah.
then the conversation first begins by saying, Slojana, when I said that earlier, like, it must have made you feel, so awful, so frustrated, so despondent. Is there anything else that it made you feel? And so now she's like, oh my goodness, he's making an honest effort to enter into my pain.
Right.
Well, Jiva, on top of what you mentioned, yeah, I also felt, belittled and humiliated, and so it's like, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at what I did to my wife,
Right.
by what I did. And so at that point, because I have made an attempt to enter into her pain, which sometimes is very difficult for men, by the way. Women tend to, as a rule, have less difficulty expressing their feelings. And I think in society, when a woman
Right.
expresses her feelings, nobody says anything. But sometimes a guy gets, too emotional or expresses feelings. He's told, be a man, you know,
Yeah.
like, be
Suck it
strong,
up,
man.
guy. What
Yeah,
what the hell? You sissy. You know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so we actually like give people like a chart. We call it the feelings wheel.
Uh-huh.
We didn't develop it; somebody else developed it, and say, okay, look at that and find a few feelings that will describe, because your wife understands feelings way better than you do.
Yes.
And when you use this language, then she will say, ah, now you're talking to my language. Okay, now I can relate to you, and her heart starts to soften towards you.
Yeah, and
And
it's getting that openness too. Sometimes, if it's happened so much, you're guarded, you've guarded that heart, and
yeah,
now you're thinking, why is he saying this?
yeah,
Okay, what's going on? Is like, what do you want? It's
yeah,
because there's been so much of it on the
yeah,
other side. So it's really opening and being, truthful and honest with each other to say, hey, I want to heal myself, but
yeah,
more importantly, I want to help you heal, and
yeah,
I want this to work. Can we work together in this healing process? And being able, like you said, when you have that explosion, everybody, blows up. You can let the dust settle, and then you come back out and say, okay, what can we do to really work together here
yeah,
and make us a better couple
yeah.
by having empathy with one another and helping that
Hmm.
growth go. It
Yeah,
doesn't just boom and click overnight,
yeah,
because again, if that pain and that those feelings, I'm not talking on a woman's side here, right? It has built up, built up, built up. You're on guard. It's like, and seriously, it's like,
yes.
okay, all right. What is it you're leading up to that you're gonna, really slap me in the face with here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I worked in a man's world back in the '80s, and a lot of the guys started coming to me, and asking me about different issues that were going on in their home life, right? And it's like, I don't know what to do. They buy him flowers, they buy him a new car, all this stuff, and it's like they don't give a crap about it, right? And it's like,
exactly.
okay, this is what she's asking for. Well, why don't you
Yeah.
just say it? Well, women don't just say it. You're supposed to know it and feel it, okay? So this is what she's actually saying.
Yeah,
And if you just do this, you're going to find the
yeah,
reaction is going to be different.
yeah,
And they're like, that doesn't make sense. So what do you got to lose? Is it working the way you're doing it? No.
yeah,
Then what'd you ask me for? True.
yeah,
So let's make a deal. It's like, okay, you give it a shot. When I come back next week, right, then you tell me, did it work or didn't it work?
yeah,
And they're all like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how simple this is. And it
yeah,
really is. It
yeah.
really is. Ask her what she wants, and she will
Hmm.
tell you.
Yeah,
So be
yeah,
prepared,
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
And,
Mike,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, go
No,
ahead.
no. So one of the things that a helpful tool that people can use is also love languages.
Yes.
If you go to, like, let's just Google love languages and take the quiz as a couple, you begin to realize that like everybody will say, even the people that come to us, like wanting to kill each other,
Right.
will say, but we still love each other. And
Right.
it's like, okay,
What part do you
you're
love and what part don't you love, right?
if you're loving each other, but you clearly are not feeling love from your spouse,
Right.
we have a problem. So one of the reasons, I mean, to deal with all the hurts and stuff, like that's the deep work that we do. But at another level, it could be also because you're not speaking each other's love language.
Exactly.
Like for a lot of women, generally speaking, we found from people we worked with, one of the most important love languages is time, quality time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
And it's not the words that you speak. It's the time
yes,
that you spend just being there.
yeah,
Just coming
yeah,
up and giving them a big hug, or just,
yeah,
hold them,
yes,
just, just that silence
yeah, yeah.
is
Or
more
just be with
rewarding
them,
than anything,
yeah,
right?
without looking at your phone and taking calls in the middle of the conversation,
Right.
which these days
Shut the
unfortunately we do a
boob
lot.
tube off, right? And just pay attention, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But what the guy's thinking, and this is like very true of the CEO types, the guys that are making big bucks, and allowing I mean, if the wife chooses to, she can have a career of her own, or she can just stay at home. So the guy thinks, hey, I'm bringing in like a good strong six-figure income. You can go buy anything you want, and you're not happy. Like, I'm a good provider. They look at me and say, Sebastian, don't you think I'm a big provider, a good provider for my wife? Why is she not happy? Well, ding dong.
Yeah, ding dong is
Her
right.
love language is quality time.
Yeah.
And you can bring in, like zillions of dollars, and that is no comparison for you to spending 10 minutes just looking into her eyes, holding her hands, and just
Yes.
hugging her and being there with her and for her.
Yeah.
Like for her, like there's no value on that.
Right. And
Like
no
it's
words have to
invaluable.
pass. And I think I think that's kind of what throws a lot of men off is like, I don't have to say anything.
Yeah,
No. The silence is golden. That's why they say
yeah,
silence is golden, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to understand those things, and by the way, just to kind of backtrack a second, the empathy and the way in which you talk to people when there's been a conflict, that is equally applicable in the corporate setting, in a
Right.
business setting,
Mm-hmm.
where maybe in the middle of a meeting you chewed somebody out in front of everybody and embarrass them, and now you can go back on the one hand and say, well, she deserved that, or on the other hand, you can, hey, can I come and have 5 minutes with you? And just go into their office or invite them into your office and say, you know what, when I said that to you, I know that that really hurt you, and
Right.
here's how it must have made you feel. Is there anything else? You give that person a chance to express their feelings, like they will be so loyal to you,
And
because
that's true.
yeah,
It's that recognition. And
yeah,
say, hey, I was in the wrong. I
yeah,
overstepped my boundaries, right?
yeah, yeah,
And to work through that rather than let that fester and fester and
yeah,
fester,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, still obviously you had to point out to them the error of what they did, but the way in which you attack them as a human being,
Wasn't
let's say,
right,
yeah, like that's what you're dealing with,
right.
yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
anyway,
So
husbands and wives have to do the same thing too. Yeah, right. When you,
yeah, so it doesn't matter what relationships, because if you look at it, every single relationship that you have, whether it's with a partner, whether it's in business, whether it's out there, on a vacation time, people that you just met, or knew, it, it's a marriage of some form.
yeah,
It's that interaction, right?
yes,
And it again goes back to action reaction. So having a full cup and expressing an empathy, and so that automatic response, if you can catch that automatic response before and go
yeah,
after the juggler,
yeah,
that is a healing process for yourself.
yeah,
That's also going to impact the person on the other side,
yeah,
whether it's out loud or not, because it gives you the opportunity to say, whoa, yeah, here's something I can fix in me. This is a piece that I can make a better me of because I
yeah.
didn't go after a juggler, even on a total stranger,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Like one of the, I'll just share something with you. One of the techniques that we teach, not just couples but others as well, is the Bible uses an expression. The expression is take every thought captive.
Right.
Okay, and so what we teach people is, picture yourself as a police officer, like you have the authority, like it's not your weapon that gives you authority, it's the badge. So you have the
Exactly.
authority, like you control your thoughts. You don't allow your thoughts to control you. So we teach them an acronym, and the acronym is HALT. And so HALT simply stands for H is hold that thought. Okay.
Okay.
A is I arrest you. Those you speak to the thought is I arrest you thought.
Uh huh.
And because we come from a Christian tradition, we say in the name of Jesus, in the name of the law, in the name of Jesus, right? That's where it comes from. And then we lock that thought, up in a cell.
Uh huh.
And again, the rest of that, the principle in the Christian world is you take every thought into captivity to obedience in Christ. So it's like, okay, I'm going to lock you up in a jail cell with Jesus. So now the thought is no longer mine to deal with.
Right.
And T is, well, thank you, Jesus, for taking care of the thought for me.
That's a great way to release that out of
Yeah,
its control over you,
yeah,
right? Because you are
yeah,
taking charge of it, which is really
yeah,
good. So,
yeah, yeah.
God,
Sometimes
Jiva,
we say, yeah,
go ahead.
sorry.
Go
Sometimes we
ahead.
say tell people like count to 3 or 10 or whatever.
Great.
That'll work, but it doesn't take the thought captive because that thought's still going to linger over you.
Great.
So if you can just get that thought out of your system and hand over to somebody else,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
then
kind of like that race, and you're just handing off the wand, right? It's like, hey, it's
yeah,
all yours. I'm done
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
Right?
And now the
Yeah.
thought, because it was starting out as a molehill, but if
Yeah.
you dwell on that thought, it's going to go into a mountain.
Exactly.
But you catch it when it's a molehill, and then it's like, knock it off just like
Yeah,
that.
that's that first trigger there is that whoop, Houston, you got a problem. What are you gonna
Yeah,
do about it? Right? And it's
yeah,
and again that's taking that responsibility onto the South.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Because where it does begin and end is here. Right?
Yes,
Jiva,
absolutely.
this has been fantastic. Oh gosh, we could continue this conversation like forever. And you're doing some totally awesome work, up there, and especially now, with the uncertainties. There's no predictability left in the world, right? So we're all kind of like a new beginning. It's an awakening, and that
Mhm.
awakening is to the spirit essence of who you are, and to
Yes.
work in those levels is what you said.
Yeah.
Going from the spirit to the soul to the body. It is so powerful, and I think people really need to understand that there there is a way out. And the
Yeah.
first thing you need to do is take a look at Houston, give yourself permission,
Yeah.
start the inner forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and then start forgiving outside of, and seek out those that can really direct you in that manner, because there's a
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of us out there, and not one of us is the perfect match for you.
Yeah.
So look and search until you find that match. And you know what,
Mm-hmm.
you may be working with someone and you reach a plateau, and that person you've been working with is say, you know what, you're right, we're on a plateau. you know I do know someone I think can take you exactly where you want to go on your next
Mm-hmm.
journey, section. Would you like me to give you some names? Well, they've worked with you and they trust you now, and
Yeah.
that's why having a community and collaborating with healers on all these different levels and all these different trainings and stuff makes it so much more beneficial, instead of saying, oh well, I can't share you with somebody else, you're going to take my client.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Exactly.
that's where a lot of it was. It's
Mm-hmm.
about working together. If we're going to create world peace, the world within our own skin bag has to have peace within itself,
Absolutely.
and that's working with each other and being able to trigger these things to
Yeah.
become that better you. And that's why the theme of this show took place, and it is such an honor having you on the show today. Everything you shared today is going to really impact someone's life, and I want to say thank you so much for being here, Jiva.
You're very welcome, Beverly. I appreciate the opportunity very much.
And if people want to reach you, where do they go to find you?
Okay, so our website is very, very easy to remember. Our last name is Sam, so it's thesams.ca. We're from the Sams from Canada, so thesams.ca will take you to our website, and from there, you can contact us. There's an application form you can fill out if you need help with your marriage, or we have a free resource. By all means, please download the free resource, which basically is called "Your Marriage Can Survive Any Crisis."
Awesome.
And when we have a little bit of analysis and a lot of actionable steps that you can take, it'll bless you for sure.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. So it's THESAM.ca.
S, no, SAMS.
SAMS. Okay,
Yeah,
so
the
it's dual.
SAMS.
It's both of
Yes,
you guys, right? So
exactly. Yeah,
THESAMS.ca.
that's right. Yeah,
TheSams.com.
that's CA.
Beautiful.
Yeah. All
Beautiful.
right.
So you heard it from the expert here, him and his wife. They're going to help you move through this journey together and succeed. So thank you, Jiva, for being here today. So go out there and be that best you that you can be, because you know what? Jiva and I, we're going to be the best we that we can be. And we'll see you all on another show.